Warning, the content you're about to see is for entertainment purposes only. The following show features stunts performed either by professionals or under the supervision of professionals. Accordingly, PSR and the producers must insist that no one attempt to recreate or reenact any stunt or activity performed in this show. Enjoy.
Well, son, back in my day, I was a fast shot in the West. No one could compete. Those were the good old days. Used to call me Big Dick Johnson. I rode a Kiger 9C, kept that polymer on my hip. And that's how I met your grandma.
Howdy, 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 howdy.
Well, I bet you can guess what I'm gonna say to you now. Howdy, friends. Welcome back to another episode of PSR. Today we got something a little strange from Anderson Manufacturing. You may know Anderson from their ARs that are very inexpensive and sometimes kind of cheap. But we're here to find out whether or not this handgun is built like a pony or like a gosh darn Mustang. Now, before we get into the review of this handgun, I gotta thank KAK Industry for being the channel sponsor for Print Shoot Repeat. Check out KAK Industry for all the parts you could ever want for your ARs and more. They got lots of stuff. I'm talking crazy cool calibers like 9x39 AR parts. You don't find those very often. They make Remington 700 barrels as well. Nice short guys, 300 blackout. Pretty dang sweet. If you want to get 10% off your order and also support me in my struggle against YouTube censoring my gosh darn videos, I would highly recommend not ever using the code PSR for 10% off. Don't do that. That would be horrible. Anyway, thank you KAK for sponsoring this channel.
Before we get the review started, I gotta thank Gun Zone Deals for sending me this unit. I did not get paid by them, and I didn't get paid by Anderson Manufacturing. I am going to be unbiased in my review of this pistol, but they did send it to me for free, so getting the disclosure out of the way, that's it. So thank you, Gun Zone Deals.
Hey YouTube, I just want to let you know I went and got a background check for this gun. This is not homemade, which means it's got a serial number. And you know what that means? It is completely safe. One thing about serial numbers is that they prevent crime from happening. No crimes ever happen with guns with serial numbers, and that's a fact. So thanks YouTube for allowing me to make gun content about perfectly safe firearms like this.
Alright, so we're gonna ditch the accent. Maybe some of you wanted me to keep it going, but some of you probably didn't. And you know what? Out of respect for the folks in the South, I'm gonna not do that. But what do we have here? Well, we have the Anderson Kiger 9C. Now, Anderson, as you know, they have been the butt of jokes in the AR community for a long time, just because they make affordable parts and maybe sometimes not the highest quality. Like I said, I go with KAK. I prefer KAK parts to any other AR manufacturer. However, I'm very curious to see what Anderson's first foray into pistols feels like. Now, a Kiger is a breed of horse, which makes perfect sense when you see the logo of Anderson. Now, is the Kiger a pony or is it a wild stallion? We will find out. So let's talk a little bit about the specs of this gun. It ships with one Magpul Pmag, 15 round capacity. This is a Glock 19 Gen 3 clone, essentially. It's got a couple different things to the Glock, and it comes in at a much lower price point than a standard Glock. Now at this point, you're probably very familiar with Glock clones, whether it's the frames that you can make yourself or ones that are finished. There's all sorts of frames out there at this point because Glock's patent expired on the Gen 3 Glock. As a result, you have a lot of companies making clones, and this is no different. Now, we'll start at the top and go down. The slide is made out of 416 stainless steel. It is a DLC coating. The coating feels very high quality. It's got some nice relief cuts in the top. It actually has a very aesthetically pleasing profile, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a giant fan of these logos that some of the companies put on the slides. I would rather have either the slide have just something very slightly engraved in there, very subtle, or just nothing at all. I don't necessarily love this giant Kiger 9C and the Anderson logo. I don't know if that was the best move, but you know what, I'm nitpicking a little bit. We have all the standard parts here on the slide. We've got polymer, normal Glock sights. You can switch them out with anything that can fit on a Glock. On the front here, one of my favorite parts is this crown barrel. A crown barrel is when that barrel is nice and flush against the slide and has a bevel in. That way, if you were to scrape this on, let's say, some concrete or drop it, it actually wouldn't affect the accuracy of the barrel, because sometimes that can happen on a regular Glock where the barrel protrudes just ever so slightly. This does weigh a couple ounces less than a normal Glock, which is, of course, nice. The rear backplate is just the same as a Glock, and as far as the slide goes, it's pretty much just a Glock slide. Now, the barrel is slightly different on this pistol. It is a Gen 5 Glock profile barrel, so the rifling on it is much like the new match grade Gen 5 Glock barrels, which is slightly different than some of the other pistols that are Gen 3 Glock clones on the market, which is cool. Now let's go into the frame itself. This is where the Kiger 9C really offers its own vibe compared to the Gen 3 Glocks. So this is a much thicker grip than a Glock. For me, it feels a little bit thick, but sometimes I like to grip a nice, thick, black. It's got a different angle, and it doesn't have these front finger grooves that a normal Gen 3 Glock has. The other thing I notice when I hold it is that this beaver tail is very, very extended, and it just does a really good job of allowing you to get that nice and tight, high grip. The other thing it offers is a much more aggressive stippling on the frame. Some of you may like that, some of you may not, but for me, that's a big plus. I think it's perfect, the amount of grip that it offers. Also, it's got these serration kind of cuts here on the back and in the front, and those are very, very grippy as well. In addition to that, it's got a recessed part of the frame on the front, so you can put your thumb up here and get a nice purchase on it and kind of use that almost as a gas pedal to push forward and keep the recoil down. The other part of the frame that's great is this undercut here, both here on the front of the trigger guard. On here, there are some grippy surfaces, and on below, it has some grippy surfaces, as well as this really aggressive undercut, which of course the Glock doesn't have, and that is something that people usually do when they modify their Glocks, is get rid of this part here on the frame. So all of that comes standard, which is really great. Now I've got Picatinny rail on the front, which you could argue is better than the standard Glock, because Glock requires you to get a specific accessory mounting platform for your front rail, whereas this is just a Picatinny, ha ha ha, oh yeah. Picatinny rail on the front, you can fit any kind of light or anything you want. You could put a nugget dipping sauce holder if you like.
Tasty.
Now, as far as internally, I can't show you what's inside because I'm afraid YouTube might strike me for that, but what is inside of this thing is very similar to a Gen 3 Glock, where it's got the rails actually molded into the frame. Compared to your standard Gen 3 Glock, it is very, very similar on the internals. Not much different, but it does feel very solid compared to some of the other frames offered, which use their own mounting locking blocks and things like that. This is very much similar to the Glock design. Now, another really important bit, which I noticed when I was shooting and firing this thing, is it does not use a standard Gen 3 Glock ejector, which we know has issues. The 9 and 40 Gen 3 ejectors sometimes have really inconsistent ejection, and this itself is really, really consistent ejection. I would compare it in shape to more like a Gen 4 or 5 ejector. It's also got this indent here, this nice little groove to put your thumb, which I really appreciate, which the Glock sort of has its own version of this, but this is much more aggressive and much more clear where your thumb is supposed to go. And I feel like this would fit really a lot of different kinds of hands. The other cool thing about this that's different than a Glock is it has a little channel for debris inside the frame Magwell, where in case anything was to get up there, it actually would kind of channel it out and it would be able to seep out, whether it was like mud or water or dust or something, which is kind of cool and different and something that the Glock doesn't have. Also, the trigger feels much crisper than a standard Glock trigger. Let's ghost it together. As far as compatibility goes, I wanted to see if the slide would fit on different frames and if the frame would fit on different slides, and they all fit great. They're all Gen 3 Glock slides. They're not all Glock branded slides or frames, but it fit on the P80, it fit on the Glock OEM, it fit on the 80P arms, it fit on a lot of different frames, and same with the slide. It fit on everything, and I even put a different threaded barrel on there, and that did fine. So you don't need to only put Gen 5 barrels in here. Everything pretty much works on different platforms, so that's kind of nice. So what was it like to shoot? Well, I was actually pleasantly surprised firing this thing. I put around 350 rounds through it and really tried to run it hard. I had only one malfunction, but I believe that was the result of a ETS mag I was using. The ETS mags, in my opinion, are not the best mags. It's the clear see-through mags. I've had issues with those in the past, so I really don't think that was the fault of the gun. Every other mag I used ran flawlessly. It ran great with Magpul Pmags, it ran great with OEM Glock mags and off-brand Glock mags. I really didn't have any issues. The Magwell is also really nice. It's got a little bit of a bevel to it. It's not like a hugely flared Magwell, but it does offer a little bit, and it offers these tabs here which allow you to take some certain mags that are a little bit more chunky on the base plate and really just grip those things and take them out. Really no problem. As far as accuracy goes, I didn't really have any issues. I didn't put this on a bench rest and just like test it for accuracy, but it felt very accurate to me. It certainly was more accurate than I am as a shooter. All right, we got our Kiger 9C. So far, so good. Let's try the gong at 100 yards. See if I can get it first try. Yeehaw! Let's see. Howdy. Well, I don't mind if I do. I just used the iron sights. It's got a simple white dot for the iron sights. And like I said, you can swap those out for anything that can fit on a Glock. As far as holster fitment goes, it fit in my T-Rex arms holster that I use. Say what you want about T-Rex arms, but they make great holsters, in my opinion. The battle belt I used was an Advanced Warfighting Solutions battle belt. It is my favorite belt. I would highly suggest you check them out. I pretty much use their belts exclusively, and they're awesome. The recoil felt pretty much just like a Gen 3 Glock, but I did have an easier time grabbing the frame because it just is nice and girthy. We all like to grab girthy things sometimes and just really grip them. It allowed me to get that gorilla grip on that and just hold it down. I really didn't have any issues with it at all. Even with just shooting the iron sights, I felt like this thing was a pretty solid performer. I think it did pretty dang well for being such an inexpensive pistol. Now, what does this pistol come in at? So this comes in at retail, I think it's like $450 or something like that, but at Gun Zone Deals, which is where I got this one, it is on sale for $389.99. Now that is an insane price point for something that offers so much. In my opinion, that is a steal for what you're getting. This is just as good in my opinion. I know we use that term, but yes, this is just as good as a Gen 3 Glock. At this point in time, it is a very, very good option. Now, of course, the other competitor to this firearm is going to be the PSA Dagger, which is in the same price point. I would argue that this feels a little bit more solid in the frame aspect than the PSA Dagger. The slide feels great, but I would argue that they're both about the same in the slide department. I haven't had any issues with my Dagger, but we will do a review on one soon. But I really do like this frame over the Daggers. It just feels really nice and solid in the hand, but it all kind of comes down to what you prefer. The Dagger has a finger groove in it. This doesn't. This feels much more similar to like a Strike 80 frame. It feels really just great in the hand, and I really, really like this beaver tail. So the positives of this gun are that it has a great frame, it's very grippy, it feels very solid in the hand, and the slide is very well made. No problems presented themselves with the function of the gun. It really ran great, and I had a lot of fun with it. This frame, I think Anderson may sell them by itself. They may be branded under something else, but this frame is an awesome frame. I like the slide too, but that leads me to the negatives. Now, as far as negatives go, I really only have one major one, and that is that it doesn't come cut with an optics cut from the factory. Maybe Anderson's in the process of making a version. I think if this came from the factory with an optics cut, it would be right on the Dagger's heels as far as just competitively priced and in that budget Glock 19 clone category. I still think it's a great pistol, but it really would be amazing if it came from the factory with an optics cut. The only other small little nitpick I have is just how big this logo is. I would just prefer there not to be a giant logo on there. I love the profile and the design of the slide. I actually really think it's pretty beautiful. It kind of looks like a Zeb slide almost, but it's obviously much less expensive. So I really do give them props on the design and the aesthetics of the pistol. It just pisses me off a little bit. I don't necessarily want to advertise Anderson to the rest of the people at the range. All respect due. In conclusion, I really do like this pistol as a competitor to the PSA Dagger. It is very competitively priced, under 400 bucks, and you get a really, really nice gun. I would love to do a comparison between the Dagger and the Kiger 9C. So that is it for this episode of PSR. Before you go, I want to say, if you feel like subscribing, please do. Please check if you're subscribed, because YouTube does unsubscribe people, and it's no fun, but it does happen. And share, like, comment, you know, give something to the algorithm to grab onto. Something deep within its soul. Does this make me look fat? And I want to thank you guys again for joining me. I have merch and I have a Patreon. They are in the description. Go check it out. We have a lot of fun here. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, thank you, partner, and have a great day.
There, PSR here. Today we got the Kiger 9C from Anderson Manufacturing. It's a Glock clone. Oh my goodness, it's a Glock clone. We got an Anderson Glock clone. Glock clone. Glaucoma. Well, howdy there. We're here. Well, howdy there. PSR here, and we're here to look at the Kiger 9C from Anderson Manufacturing. Well, is it a poverty pony or a wild stallion? We're gonna see how it does. Let's give her. So far, so good.